The release of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, aka Spartan Simulator, is almost upon us, 5th of October to be exact. And from what I've played and heard so far, it looks like the game is building upon the foundations that Origins laid down and how that changed up the series, as well as fleshing out the RPG elements. However, Odyssey is doing something that other Assassin's Creed games haven't really done before to this extent, and that's to really step away from historical accuracy and utilise mythology to create surreal elements, including proper boss fights. Yeah, we got weird aliens in Assassin's Creed 2. The series has always had some sci-fi vibes to it with the whole Animus thing and reliving people's memories, but you'll see what I mean. I think Odyssey takes it to a new level. So I was able to play a new build of the game at Gamescom, that's what you're seeing here, and at one point I had to fight Medusa. You know that Medusa, weird snake lady, turns people into stone. And more interesting than that, this was a proper boss fight. And what struck me was just how good it was, and how difficult it was, and just how different it was to previous Assassin's Creed games. Medusa had a couple of mechanics, like one of them was a glare that would slow you down if you were exposed to it for too long. Check out this mid-stone freezing attack. Awesome. She had a couple of other attacks too, and could also send waves of cursed soldiers at you to complicate matters. Thank God she couldn't just instantly turn me into stone, though. I think that would have been incredibly frustrating. The intro cutscene is great though. You go through this temple where all of her stony people are, and she just instantly looks at her old friend and turns her into stone, and then gets smashed into dust. It shouldn't have been funny, but I found it hilarious. This got me thinking though, if this game is going to lean on Greek mythology a lot more, and you're going to be fighting bosses that are essentially themselves mythical creatures from that time period, it could open the door for some epic fights and horrific enemies. Now, which enemies would you end up facing? Well, I of course had to delve a little into Greek mythology, do a bit of research, and I put together a list of some enemies that I would love to face off against when the game releases. Greek mythology was one of my favourite things to learn about in history class at school. It was just so dark, the DC universe would have been proud. Let's start with the Minotaur. We already have a good idea that we'll face off against him at some point thanks to a teaser from earlier in the year. And he was basically a beast that had the body of the man but the head of a bull. And he was known for devouring flesh, but also for his home, which happened to be a labyrinth. Quite literally, a giant maze constructed by the inventor Daedalus and his son Icarus. Thinking about how this could be in the game, it could involve you having to traverse the maze with different stages of boss fights along the way as the Minotaur hunts you down. I for one think that could be quite interesting in a AAA fashion. And in Greek mythology, the Minotaur was eventually slain by Athenian hero Theseus. Okay, so moving on from a bull, what about a giant water creature, the Hydra? The Hydra was a giant serpent supposedly living in the Lake of Lerna in the Argolid, which also was thought to be the entrance to the underworld. See how cool this stuff is? According to Hesiod, who was a Greek poet, the Hydra was the offspring of Typhon, another beast who we'll get to shortly, and Echidna, who was a monster that was half woman and half snake. Delicious. I'll tell you what, the Greek mythology loves monsters who are half and half. Apparently, she was the mother of a lot of monsters in Greek mythology though. Anyway, back to the Hydra. Some versions of this could go on land too, so maybe, but the amount of heads that this beast would have depends on the story that you read, as tales do vary, and later stories say that every time one of its heads was cut off, two more would grow in its place. One other thing that the Hydra had was extremely potent venom, so much so that its breath could kill any man. Just needed a few Tic Tacs really. So how would this boss fight work in the game? Well, Odyssey does have water-based combat, which we've seen. It uses a lot of the similar systems that were in Black Flag, so that's not out of the question. So maybe, perhaps a ship battle with the Hydra could be something a bit interesting and different. What if it were to crash your ship and then you have to fight the damn thing on land? We'll see. What about Cyclops? Who doesn't want to fight a giant monster with one massive eye? Am I right? Maybe? The Cyclops were a primordial race of giants with a single eye in the middle of their head. And the word Cyclops actually means round-eyed or circle-eyed. And they were meant to possess great strength and ferocity. And fearing their power, their father Uranus threw the monsters into the pit of Tartarus. They were eventually freed by the mighty Zeus after the Olympians came into power, and they would then in turn craft thunderbolts for him, because apparently thunderbolts need to be crafted. Pretty cool story if you ask me, and when I think about how this could work with you fighting against a huge enemy, I tend to think of the most recent God of War and the trolls and how that tackles bigger enemies. If done right though, it could be incredibly rewarding and very cool to take down such a huge enemy, especially a Cyclops. Bloody stab that dude right in the eye. Moving on, and because we can't seem to escape them, it's back to monsters who are half human and half something else. This time around, the Sphinx, and I find the way this thing looks absolutely grotesque. This monster was said to have the head of a woman, but the body of a lion, but wait, there's a twist. The Sphinx also had bloody wings of an eagle. Would you look at that? What the hell even is it? Now, the Sphinx also appears in Egyptian mythology, and as I understand it, the two cultures had pretty tight links and influenced each other. They were in the same Snapchat group. In Greek mythology though, the Sphinx was considered to be a woman and was the daughter of Orthus and either Echidna, who we spoke of earlier, or Chimera. In the Greek myth, she asks riddles to all travellers around her home of Thebes. One riddle went as follows, see if you can get this. Which is the creature that has one voice, but has 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet in the afternoon, and 3 feet at night? Did you get it? No, me neither. Oedipus, who was the king in Greek mythology, answered it correctly though. The answer was man. 4 feet when crawling as a child, 2 when walking as an adult, and 3 with a walking cane when old. Just how you would implement the Sphinx into the game, I'm not too sure, but it does look kind of good. Now finally, we briefly mentioned the next monster earlier as the possible father of the Hydra, and here he is. The Typhon. Typhon was considered the father of all monsters, the big daddy. He was birthed from Gaia, who was a primal Greek goddess that symbolises the earth and Tartarus. How Typhon actually appears is a bit more difficult, as he's often surrounded by thunder and dark clouds. In fact, he appears to mortals as a freak storm, kind of odd, and to demigods as a colossal shadowy figure. In Greek mythology, when he stands upright, he is said to touch the stars. The lower half of his body was said to be 2 large snakes, what the hell, either vipers or boa constrictors, depending on what you believe, and as if that wasn't enough, he's also said to have had wings that when spread could block out the sun. He had incredible strength too, as you could imagine from such a massive beast, as well as being durable and pretty much invulnerable to all Olympian attacks. Not only that, but get this, he could just cause natural disasters by summoning thunderstorms, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions and floods. And he could also breathe fire, of course he could. Now don't get me wrong, this could be reasonably hard to put into a game given the context of the mythology, but if it was in the game and it had all of those elements, just imagine how much of an epic multi-stage boss fight this could be. Will we actually see many more of these Greek creatures and monsters, mythology in the game? I really hope so, and I think that we will. We already know that Medusa and the Minotaur are in there, but they're much smaller scale enemies compared to the Hydra, Cyclops and the Typhon, but I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility that we could see them. After all, Odyssey has shown that it's not afraid to utilise the Greek mythology to make a more interesting and fun game. I love that they've gone full meme with this and just embraced the mythology and gone, you know what, it's a sci-fi game, we're just going to go mythology mad, there are creatures, you can summon fire from your sword and do a big shockwave attack. Spartan Simulator is shaping up like a decent game, and I'm looking forward to the full release. So that's all for today guys. A big thanks to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked it, give it a like. If you didn't like it, dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.